Hello everyone, welcome to this review of the Illidan Stormrage statue by Blizzard Entertainment. I already did an unboxing of this piece. I got it a few weeks ago, I think. So if you haven't checked that out, you should definitely go and do that as well. But in this video, I'm gonna basically review it. I'm gonna talk about the sculpt, the pose, and the overall concept of this piece, and the paint application and all that. So I'm basically just gonna give you my thoughts on this piece from an overall perspective, and I'm gonna touch on the pros and cons as well. There are a bit of both, but I do honestly feel that the pros greatly outweigh the cons when it comes to this particular statue. But all that is gonna follow in this video here. But what I'm gonna start by doing is, I think I'm gonna zoom in on this piece. But before we get to that, I'm gonna give you a 360 of him, so you just get the overall idea of the design here. And I can already reveal that I think the design is one of the main selling points of this piece, because he's so impressive, and the way that he's posed here and the details and all that, the overall expression of him is one of the things that I think kinda convinced me that I needed to get this piece, because it's a very iconic and impressive looking statue in my opinion. Anyways, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna try and zoom in so you can get some of the details more up close. But it's a bit difficult with this statue because he's posed in this very crouched or closed pose somehow. So it's kind of difficult to see his face and all that, but I'm gonna do my best and see if I can shoot him in a way that you can see the details and all that. And I'm also gonna add some photos and stuff, so you'll be able to see the details in any case. But yeah, sit back and enjoy, and we're just gonna zoom in and discuss some of the details of the sculpt. Alright, so here we are a bit more up close, and now we can really see all the details of the sculpt. I do feel that the sculpt here, the way that they did it with the details and everything, is definitely one of the highlights of this statue, and even a selling point, because they did such an amazing job with the sculpt basically. He's kind of has this gloomy pose where he's looking down, and that makes it a bit difficult to actually see his face clearly. So I'll be sure to add some footage of that over the course of this video, so you can of course see all the small details that can be difficult to tell from just looking at this piece from this particular angle. Now, if you look at the skin, which is basically what's really impressing me, the details of the skin are amazing. You have these small ripples and wrinkles everywhere, which makes the skin look very alive and organic, and just very, very detailed. It looks amazing, I think. And I'm gonna do a 360 so you can also see him from the other angles. And he has these armbands or wrists that are wrapped in this cloth, which also looks amazing. It's so nicely detailed. And it's the same on the back basically. And he also has these horns or bone protruding from his upper arms or forearms, which look also really cool and really adds to this demonic appearance of him. It looks really creepy, really. But yeah, the skin is just so well done, I think. They did an incredible job with that. The wings, by the way, are probably difficult to tell from this particular angle, but I'm gonna try and also get some footage of that added to this video. But in terms of the wings, they're really big. They really add a lot of spectacle to this piece and makes him look even more impressive. They contribute to the overall expression of the piece with just this set pose. It just adds a lot to the overall concept here. The wings are made from a different material than the rest of the statue. It's still a relatively hard resin, but it's transparent in most places. But it's colored as well, so it's a mix of some kind of fleshy tone has been added to the plastic. But it's still kind of transparent, so the light will actually move through it and give this piece this very cool organic feel. But again, we have a very nicely detailed paint application also here. And when it comes to the paint application, actually, it's also one of the main selling points I feel of this piece. Again, it adds to the details. It really complements the overall sculpt and the level of detail here. They did an incredible job with the paint application, actually. We have this violet or lavender color going on his skin, with some highlights and some shading and everything. It looks very, very organic, actually, and they did a really good job with that. He has these tattoos going on his arms and on his torso as well. Now, if you look at Illidan in other media, like the in-game footage or whatever, the tattoos are actually almost shining or glowing in this neon-like glow. But on this statue, it's a more subtle expression. They are more chromatic somehow, with a more metallic finish, but still a very subtle green color going on. It looks very fitting to this statue, where everything is kind of dreary and gloomy. So it makes sense that these statues are also very subtle somehow, and they don't steal too much of the attention from the rest of the piece. I could imagine that they could have done a green neon-like color with a more saturated expression, but I think that would actually have taken away from this statue somehow. But overall, when it comes to the paint application, as I said, it's one of the highlights of this statue, and I honestly feel that they did such a good job with the paint that it's almost at the level of a prototype. And that's even more impressive, because I do believe they're actually going to make 5,000 samples of this, pieces of this statue. 5,000 is a lot, and being able to actually maintain this quality and detail of the paint application is in and on itself very impressive, I think. So yeah, the paint application, not just on this area of the piece, but everywhere basically, is definitely a selling point of this statue. So yeah, as you can probably tell, I'm actually quite impressed with this statue so far, and especially what we've looked at now, the skin tones and everything. I wish I could show you his face better, but I'll be adding those photos so you can see it. Maybe at this point I actually already added some, so you can really see the details of his face and his expression and everything. It looks very impressive. Everything about this expression and this pose and the concept is very well done and well implemented, in my opinion. I want to zoom out a bit, or at least turn the camera a bit down so you can see his legs and also his warglaives that he's holding in each of his hands. Because the warglaives are interesting, they look amazing, and he also has these swap out pieces, by the way, like hands. But and I'm gonna show you those as well, of course. But the warglaives kind of offered one of the problems that I had with this piece, but I was luckily able to fix that. But I want to touch upon it in any case. So just give me a moment while I set up the camera once again, and we'll have a look at that. Alright, so here we have the middle area of the statue, and yeah, I'm probably gonna start off by discussing the warglaives, because I mentioned that, and that I had some problems with at least one of them. Now the warglaives fit on with a magnet, so you can actually do a swap out of each of them by taking it off, and then you have these alternative hands that you can use instead that actually also look very impressive, but I'm gonna show you that in further detail in a bit. But yeah, I had problems with one of the warglaives. Now this one that I took off is his left one, which is actually fine, there's nothing wrong with that, but his right warglaive was actually a problem, because it was significantly warped when I received it. And with that I mean that each of the pointy ends here were actually bended inwards to such a degree that I basically needed to contact Blizzard about it, because it was bent way out of shape. And they couldn't really do anything else than offer me a full exchange of the statue. So they would give me a label and I could return it, and then they would send me a new one. But living in Denmark, that wasn't anything that I really wanted to do, because there's just too high a risk of actually getting a new piece that was broken or something. Now I had finally gotten a piece that was fine, at least in terms of the statue, and I didn't want to risk getting a new one that had other problems. So instead of following up on that, I decided to try and fix the problem myself. And what I did was to boil some water and basically dip each of the ends that were warped into the water for maybe half a minute, at least until the point that the plastic became pliable so I could bend it back into the proper shape. And then I immediately after dipped the piece into ice cold water to settle the piece. And today everything seems actually to be perfect almost. There's just very slight warping on the back, and maybe also just a very slight amount on the very tip here, but it's so little that you won't really notice it anyways. So I feel very relieved now that I actually was able to fix it. I've never done something like that before, but I guess if you're desperate enough, you're gonna try and do anything you can in order to fix stuff. So that was pretty cool, I think. So today I'm really pleased with it. It looks perfect, and nothing is really wrong with it anymore. So yeah, it's really cool that you can do that with pieces like that are made out of I don't know if it's PVC or plastic or whatever type of material that is. But yeah, it looks great now. Anyways, the paint application. Once again, I want to highlight the paint application when we're looking at this piece. It looks so good. Again, the warglaives are covered in this metallic finish here, and you have some gilded areas and some green areas. And on the middle here, on his waist, he has this leather thing hanging down with a tabard kind of thing, with a leather finish, and it looks very impressive too. It has these subtle dark gray colors going on with some gilded areas that are also kind of subtle, and a stone here in the middle, as you can obviously see. So it looks very good, I think. And I'm just gonna do a 360, and I hope it's gonna be sharp so you can see all the details still. But yeah, again, everything looks very impressive when it comes to the sculpt, the level of detail, and the paint application. As I said, he has these warglaives on. I think I mentioned that now. But they can both of them be changed out with these alternative hands that he has, that are just his hands, bare hands, with long creepy nails, very demonic looking, and these they're wrapped in this cloth. And you can basically just swap each of them out. So you remove the warglaives completely out of this context here, and he's just standing there only with his bare hands. They fit on with very strong magnets. There's a bit of a wobble maybe, so as you can see here with both of them, basically they are a bit of wobbly, and it's the same with the hands, although they have these square edges, so they should actually fit into place perfectly. But there's just a bit of give when you touch them. Nothing really problematic because they sit on quite solidly in any case, so it's nothing that really matters in my opinion. So yeah, I think that's basically it. What I wanted to say here was mainly to explain the problem that I had with the warped warglaive, because I think it's important that I kind of cover every aspect that I had, or experience that I had getting this piece. And the warglaives was certainly one of my main problems or concerns as I unboxed him. I didn't really notice it when I unboxed him, but as he was standing there, it increasingly became something that I was aware of, and it reached the point where I was desperate enough to try and go ahead and fix it. So yeah, but at this stage everything looks perfect, and I'm very pleased with him. Let's just skip right ahead now to the base. I just want to kind of move on now and talk about something else. So just give me 2 seconds while I set up the camera. Alright, so here we have the base, and the base is actually very simple. Essentially, he's just standing on this cliffside or this rocky surface, and there's really not much here to look at. But it complements the piece overall, the theme and the expression of him. And it's actually a very heavy base. I mentioned that in my unboxing as well. I was kind of surprised by the weight of it, but it does make sense because he has these wings and everything. He has a lot of stuff going on top, and you kind of have to shift the weight or the center of mass of this piece towards the lower section in order for him not to tip over and all that. But the paint application in any case is very well done. You have highlights and shades and a lot of gray tones going on here. It looks very realistic actually. And the green goo or whatever that is kind of creeping out from the interior of the rock looks very well done as well. It's a green goo that I kind of can recognize from the lore, the Legion and all that stuff. So it makes sense, and it's very true to the concept and the background of this piece here with that green stuff. It's kind of, you also see that to some degree in the Warcraft movie. It's kind of a theme, I guess, with that green stuff. It's so saturated that I could imagine that they could have used the same kind of green color on his tattoos on his torso, but I'm actually happy that they decided not to do that. He has these remarkable hoofs as well, as you can see, which adds this demonic characteristic to the character, to Illidan. But yeah, and they are also highly detailed and nicely painted, by the way, so yeah, looks very cool, I think. But it complements the entire piece well, and it serves its practical purpose of stabilizing the statue very well as well. So yeah, it looks awesome, I think. It adds a lot, even though it's quite simple, really. So with that said, I think I'm gonna skip ahead to wrapping up this review now. There's still some things that I want to mention, but when I'm doing that, I want to zoom out so you can see the entire statue as he is. So just give me 2 seconds while I set that up. Alright, so yeah, overall, I must say that my thoughts on this piece are very, very positive. I'm very, very impressed with the concept of this statue here, just the overall look of him with the pose, and the way that he represents this character that is vital to the Warcraft lore. I think it does him a great service with this statue here, because Illidan is just such an important character, and he really deserves the best possible representation in statue form. And Blizzard did a great job here. It really seems like Blizzard are really upping their game and putting out some really impressive collectibles these days. They haven't really dived into that world yet. It seems like they mostly need a reason to do a statue like BlizzCon every year, in the wake of an expansion or whatever. But they are putting out some statues, and they are actually becoming very desirable amongst the statue collecting community. You see that with the Groma's Hellscream and the Tracer statue from Overwatch as well, and in particular, I think. But they really set a new bar or a new standard this year with this statue here. But I think they could be somehow more clear when explaining what the purpose of the statue is, or so to speak, because I think a lot of people were a bit confused if this was actually a exclusive piece only available to people who attended BlizzCon this year, but that was only for the early release. Afterwards, this piece became available in their shop for everyone to order, basically, as long as you have a login. But I do prefer the latter, though, because I think something like this, and with Warcraft being such a popular thing, everyone should be able to have it, even though they didn't attend some convention or whatever. So yeah, they are really doing a better job, I think, at least when it comes to the visual aspects and the concept design and all that, but also in the implementation in terms of the paint application. And let me do some more 360, by the way. Because the paint application is something that really impresses me here, and for some reason or somehow they managed to actually do a better job with that than many of the more established companies that do high-end collectibles these days, like Sideshow and XM Studios and all that, and all those other companies. Blizzard really pulled off something very remarkable here, I feel, with this, with the execution of this piece here. So yeah, that really impresses me a lot, honestly. The paint application, again, one of the main selling points, along with the concept and the just the way that they managed to do the statue here. But there are some negatives, and of course the Warglaive that was warped on my statue here is definitely something that I need to emphasize. But I've also heard a lot of horror stories from people receiving this piece broken, in a broken state. For example, the horns here are actually very fragile, but also some paint chips or some actual chips into the sculpts in various locations. I've only noticed 2 very minor ones on mine, and that's on the very edge, and you can't actually see it because it's so hidden, but on the very edge of his right hoof, there's a very small, tiny paint chip, and there's also one on the very bottom of the base, but this is something that doesn't really concern me. It's so tiny that I could even use a black marker to cover them up and it wouldn't really stand out. So it's so easily fixable. It's not really some significant chips into the sculpt or anything. It's just very minor. But the packaging, I think, might be a problem when it comes to this statue. I also mentioned that actually in my unboxing video, and I've seen several other people getting the statue with the same problem, because the styrofoam on the very bottom of the box, if it's standing vertical, it seems to not be able to support the weight of the base on the side, so the base is actually going to break through the very bottom of the styrofoam and just kind of compromise the entire security of the piece inside the box, really, or at least for the base. One of the problems is that if you noticed in my unboxing, the art box comes with these styrofoam pads on every corner, which adds space or air to in between the art box and the actual brown shipper. So that means if the box is standing vertical, the only thing that's really supporting the weight of the bottom of the base is the styrofoam and then the art box. And obviously that wasn't enough, so the weight of the base, which is very heavy, and I've said that a couple of times already, it's kind of heavy, it's gonna blow through the styrofoam, but there is tape around the edge, so it's still being held in place. But it's just such a big design slip up, in my opinion, that I feel that I need to mention it. And that leads me to think that Blizzard still has a bit to learn when it comes to securing and packaging these pieces down in a proper way, because I've just seen and heard so many horror stories, and that was also one of the reasons that I was very hesitant to just do a full exchange of this statue. Now I have a statue here in my collection, and there's no way that I'm gonna ship that back in order to get a new one, in order to fix that warglaive that was warped. So yeah, I feel very happy now because I was able to fix that warglaive issue there, and now I just have this beautiful and impressive statue that represents World of Warcraft, or Warcraft in its entirety to me, because I have been a gamer my entire life basically, and I've played Warcraft or World of Warcraft over the last 10-11 years or whatever, a bit on and off maybe, but yeah, it's something that I hold very dear. Essentially, I really love the whole lore of that universe. It's so deep and rich in content. It's just so entertaining. So yeah, I think that basically covers everything. There are, as I've mentioned now, pros and cons about this piece, but I do really honestly feel that the positive aspects of this statue and the experience of getting it significantly outweighs the negative sides, and since the negative sides mainly relate to practical things, like things that are broken and warped, I can't really point to any downsides to this statue as such, when it comes to the statue itself, because it's so well executed and it's just a satisfying piece to have, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm very happy now, and I'm gonna see if I can find a spot for this piece. I don't really know exactly where I'm gonna put it. I've reached the point where I almost don't have any room in my cabinets anymore, but I'm thinking that this would be an ideal piece to have next to my computer, because that's when I'm playing World of Warcraft, so I could look over at that whenever I'm at a loading screen or whatever. But yeah, this is my first piece from Blizzard. I did have the Gromash Hellscream statue on order last year, which was, by the way, very less priced when it comes to shipping. Shipping for Illidan from US to Denmark was $460 I mean 462 or something dollars. So I had to go through a proxy address in the United Kingdom in order to actually get this piece to Denmark within a reasonable price. That wasn't the case back when I had the Hellscream on order, but I decided to cancel that pre-order anyways. So this is actually my first statue from Blizzard that I have in my collection, and I'm really excited to see what else they have in store for us, maybe along with a future expansion or whatever. I'd love to see his brother, Illidan Stormrage, but I also would love to see maybe Sylvanas Windrunner or something like that. That would be amazing. But yeah, it's going to be very exciting to see. Blizzard have a good history of making very interesting characters that look awesome when they are created as a statue. Even the ones we have from Sideshow have become kind of grails these days with I think it's the Diablo Overthrow Barbarian statue, I think that's what it's called. And then of course also the Arthas statue, which has risen to incredible heights in terms of price today on the aftermarket. So I can only hope that Illidan will follow troop and also increase in price. You know what I mean. It's always cool to have something that is high priced and sought after in your collection. But with an edition size of 5,000, that might be less likely to actually happen. Now I think that basically wraps up everything that I wanted to say in my review. If you have any questions or comments, of course, go ahead and post them below. If you have specific questions about how I fixed my warped Warglaive, of course, I'm also interested in helping you out with that. It was pretty simple though. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this piece, guys, if you got it yourself or if you're still contemplating on getting it. I still, at this time of this making of this video, I think it's still available via the shop. They seem to put them up in batches ever so often. So yeah, well, thanks a lot, guys. I hope you enjoyed watching this review. I think it maybe ran a bit too long, but I had a lot to say, I feel, and I wanted to be sure to add everything and all my thoughts into this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it in any case, and of course do remember to leave me a like and a comment. It supports my channel a lot when you do so, and I'm just also very excited and curious about what you have to say about this piece. Thanks a lot, guys, and I'll see you guys in my next video.